When they started dating December 1st, 2021, she told me, "Mommy, I'm into a relationship." Despite many people that asked her, she didn't accept. Said, "There's somebody I love." I said, "Okay, bring to the house." He brought Benjamin to the house. Ask him questions, what he do, what he does, his line of business, he opened. And when he's discussing with you, he will actually give you evidences of what he's into, making you believe those are the things he was into. So that gave me a little security. If you can bring your boyfriend home, I know the boy, then you'll be secured. And the boy came, and I took him as a son.
Love should never feel like control. Love should not make you afraid. Love should not silence you, isolate you, or cage you. It was July 13th, 2023, a date that would forever etch itself into the memory of one mother. Cordelia Osedion was not just Augusta's mother, she was her best friend, her closest confidant, the person Augusta called for everything, from choosing outfits to sharing dreams about her future. That morning, Cordelia's worry had grown unbearable. For 2 days, her daughter's phone had been silent. No calls, no messages, no cheerful updates on social media. For a girl who spoke to her mother every day without fail, this silence screamed that something was terribly wrong. Driven by fear, Cordelia went to Oral Estate in Aja, Lagos, the home where her daughter had been staying with her boyfriend, Benjamin Best. Outside, she saw Augusta's brand new Mercedes-Benz C300 parked neatly in its usual spot. The car was a birthday gift from Benjamin, still gleaming under the sun, almost mocking her rising panic. If Augusta had gone out, why was her car still here? Cordelia climbed the stairs with trembling hands, praying she was just being paranoid. But when the door finally swung open, the truth hit her with a force no parent should ever endure. Inside the luxury apartment lay Augusta, her young life brutally taken, her body mutilated in ways Cordelia could barely process. The air was heavy with the unmistakable smell of blood and finality. In an instant, all the dreams, all the laughter, all the plans for the future were shattered into silence. How did a relationship that looked like a fairy tale on Instagram with private jets, designer gifts, and perfect couple photos end in such horror? How could a dream life so carefully displayed online hide a nightmare so cruel inside? Before we continue, I'd appreciate it if you take a minute of your time to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Crime Stories Documentaries. These stories matter because they remind us that behind every glossy post may lie a truth we cannot see. And as you subscribe, ask yourself, if you were Cordelia that morning, would you have been ready for what she found behind that door? Please drop a comment below.
Augusta Osedion was born on February 3, 2002, in Lagos, Nigeria, a city of ambition, chaos, and endless dreams. From a young age, Augusta stood out. She wasn't just beautiful, she had an energy that drew people in. Teachers remembered her as the girl who asked questions no one else dared to ask. Friends described her as kind, but also fiercely independent. And at home, she shared an unbreakable bond with her mother, Cordelia. This wasn't a typical mother-daughter relationship. They were inseparable, best friends who shared secrets, dreams, and even outfits. Augusta called her mom every day, sometimes several times a day. She leaned on Cordelia for advice about everything, whether it was choosing a dress for an event, deciding which classes to take at Leeds City University, or even venting about small disagreements in her personal life. Cordelia knew her daughter inside out. She knew her laugh, her silences, and even the way her tone changed when something was wrong. By the time Augusta turned 21, she was already living a life most of her peers only fantasized about. As a student of Leeds City University, she balanced academics with a rapidly growing career in fashion and lifestyle influencing. On Instagram, she had amassed over 120,000 followers who admired not just her looks, but her effortless charm. She wasn't another influencer chasing clout. She was building a brand, dreaming of launching her own fashion empire. Her photos were polished, but behind them was someone deeply human. A young woman who talked about wanting to make her family proud, who dreamed of buying her mother a home, who wanted to be more than a face on a screen. Her followers saw a star in the making. Cordelia saw her daughter's hard work paying off. But fate had already introduced Augusta to a man who would change everything. His name was Benjamin Best Enairugu. But on social media, he was known by a name that would later send shock across Nigeria: Killaboi. At first glance, Benjamin was the kind of man young women fantasize about. He was 26 years old, wealthy, tall, and confident. His social media pages sparkled with the image of success: luxury cars, designer outfits, stacks of money, endless travel. He presented himself as a cryptocurrency trader and blockchain investor, someone who had mastered the modern digital economy and was living proof that wealth could be built quickly. To outsiders, he was untouchable, a rising star in Lagos's social scene. When Augusta and Benjamin's worlds collided, it looked like destiny. They were both young, attractive, and popular on Instagram. Their chemistry was instant. Soon their feeds became a gallery of couple goals: vacations in exotic locations, nights out in VIP clubs, dinners at expensive restaurants where champagne flowed freely. To their combined followers, they looked like royalty. But Benjamin was not content with ordinary gestures of affection. He went big: private jets, designer shopping sprees, diamond jewelry. And then, on Augusta's 21st birthday, he made the gesture that sealed the fairy tale image: a brand new Mercedes-Benz C300 wrapped with a red bow, presented in front of flashing cameras. Augusta posed with her car, smiling from ear to ear. Her friends cheered, her followers swooned, and Cordelia clapped along. Although deep down she wondered, how does a young man like this afford so much? This is where the first twist begins to show. Because while Benjamin's money seemed endless, whispers began circulating in Lagos about his lifestyle. Some said he was into gambling and risky bets. Others said his wealth came from fraudulent dealings in crypto. His nickname Killaboi carried an edge, a name that didn't exactly sound like stability. But Augusta, blinded by love and the constant stream of gifts, brushed these doubts aside. She thought she had found her prince, the man who made her laugh, who called her beautiful, who gave her a car most people could never afford. What she didn't know was that she was stepping into a golden cage, a cage built not just with money and gifts, but with control, jealousy, and danger. And so, this fairy tale love story that looked flawless to the world was already crumbling from the inside. She thought she was living a princess life, but in reality, she was dating the man who would become her executioner. Let me ask you, have you ever ignored red flags because someone gave you everything you thought you wanted? Share your thoughts in the comments section and think about that as we go deeper, because Augusta's story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts hide the darkest intentions.
At first, Benjamin's jealousy seemed harmless, even flattering. He would casually ask Augusta questions like, "Who's that guy commenting on your photo?" Or, "Why did it take you so long to reply to me?" Augusta would laugh it off, thinking it was normal for a man in love to be protective. She even told her mother once, "It's just because he cares too much."
But what started as playful curiosity soon became daily interrogations. Benjamin wanted to know where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing at all times. He would call her multiple times a day, and if she didn't pick up within seconds, he would bombard her with messages. Sometimes they were sweet, like, "I just want to know you're safe." Other times, they carried an edge that made her heart race. "Send me a picture right now. I don't believe you." For a while, Augusta mistook this obsession for passion. She told herself, "This is what real love feels like. This is what it means to have someone so invested in me." But her closest friends started to notice the difference. They invited her to brunch, but she would cancel last minute. They made plans to attend concerts, but she would text back, "Sorry girls, Benjamin surprised me with dinner tonight." At first it sounded romantic, but then it happened again and again until her social life slowly shrank to nothing. The golden cage was being built, not with iron bars, but with designer handbags, glittering jewelry, and 5-star vacations. Every time he lashed out in anger, Benjamin would follow with an extravagant gift. One night, he yelled at her for replying to a classmate too late, grabbing her arm in frustration. The next morning, he appeared at her door with diamond earrings. Another time, he accused her of smiling too much in a photo with friends. The fight ended in tears, but days later, he whisked her off on a weekend trip abroad, as if money could erase pain. Each gift made Augusta feel conflicted. On one hand, she enjoyed the luxury, what 21-year-old wouldn't. On the other hand, she felt indebted, like she owed him her silence, her loyalty, her obedience. The Mercedes-Benz sitting outside wasn't just a car, it was a reminder, this man owns me now. Her mother, Cordelia, sensed the shift. When she looked at her daughter's Instagram posts, the smiles seemed forced. The captions unusually centered around thanking Benjamin. Augusta once called her mother late at night, whispering through the phone, "Mama, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a movie, but one I can't get out of." Cordelia told her to come home, but Augusta brushed it off, insisting she was fine. Behind the glamorous photos, the cracks were widening. Her friends began whispering among themselves, wondering if she was hiding bruises beneath long sleeves, if her laughter in videos was rehearsed. One friend later said she was glowing, but not with happiness. It was more like she was glowing because she was under a spotlight, and she couldn't escape it. Benjamin's obsession grew darker. He began accusing Augusta of betraying him whenever she smiled at other men. He would scroll through her Instagram comments late into the night, circling names like a detective, demanding explanations. Once, when Augusta deleted a photo he didn't approve of, he became enraged, only to appear days later with another designer bag, apologizing and begging her to forgive him. The cycle was clear: tension, explosion, apology, gift, over and over again. And like many women caught in this cycle, Augusta clung to the calm periods, convincing herself each storm was the last. But in reality, each storm was preparing her for the final hurricane. Luxury had become her prison. Every handbag was a chain. Every vacation was a lock. Every gift was a wall that separated her from freedom. Ladies, have you ever mistaken control for love? Have you ever told yourself that jealousy was just another form of affection? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Augusta's story shows us how easily love can disguise itself as captivity.
It was the afternoon of July 11th, 2023, when Cordelia's phone rang. She smiled instantly when she saw her daughter's name flash across the screen.
But the moment she picked up, she knew something was terribly wrong. Augusta's voice trembled, every word soaked with fear. "Mama, we had a fight," she whispered. There was silence on the line before she added the words that would terrify Cordelia to the core. "I don't think this can be fixed." Cordelia sat frozen, gripping her phone tighter. This wasn't the daughter she knew. Augusta was a fighter, optimistic, always quick to find a silver lining. But on this day, her tone was different, defeated, terrified, almost like she had already accepted her fate. "What happened? Talk to me," Cordelia pressed, her motherly instinct screaming that her child was in danger. Augusta's replies came in fragments. "He's not himself. He's angry. Mama, I'm scared." Then, without warning, the line went dead. Cordelia called back immediately. No answer. She sent a flurry of messages begging Augusta to reply, but none were delivered. That night, Cordelia barely slept, clinging to the hope that her daughter would call again in the morning. But morning came, and the silence was deafening. For the next 24 hours, Cordelia's life turned into a nightmare of unanswered calls and unread messages. She reached out to Augusta's friends, but none of them had heard from her. The roommate, Peace, hadn't seen her since their last lecture. On Instagram, Augusta's page was unusually still. For a girl who updated her followers daily, this silence was more alarming than anything. By July 12th, Cordelia's panic had spiraled harder. She called Benjamin's number repeatedly, each ring stretching into eternity. Finally, late that evening, he answered. His voice was cold, mechanical, stripped of emotion. "She's fine," he said sharply. "Just give her space." "Put her on the phone," Cordelia demanded. "She needs time. She's resting." Then he hung up.
That response was like ice water down her spine. Resting? Augusta had never once gone this long without talking to her. Even when they argued during her teenage years, she would break the silence within hours. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The next morning, Cordelia tried again. She called Benjamin's phone, but this time it rang endlessly before switching off. She drove to Augusta's campus, hoping she'd gone back to school. No one had seen her. She checked with other family members, nothing. What Cordelia didn't know was that during those missing hours, neighbors in Benjamin's building had noticed strange things. One neighbor later admitted they heard shouting that night, followed by a loud crash. Another said they thought they heard a woman crying, but when they peeked out their window, everything looked quiet. No one called the police. No one intervened. The silence stretched into 48 hours, and for a mother who knew her daughter's routine so well, it was unbearable. Cordelia's worry shifted into certainty. Augusta wasn't just missing. Something had happened to her. And then came the final twist before discovery. Cordelia called Benjamin one last time on July 13th. This time, he didn't bother to pick up. Instead, a short text arrived on her phone. "She's fine. Don't stress yourself." It was the first text he had sent in 2 days, short, dismissive, and strangely out of character. Cordelia read it over and over, her stomach twisting. Why didn't he let Augusta write it herself? Why was his tone so cold? And most importantly, if Augusta was fine, why hadn't she spoken to her own mother? If your loved one went silent for 48 hours and their partner kept saying everything is fine, would you believe them?
Or would you trust your instincts like Cordelia did? Share your thoughts in the comments. By the end of that second day, Cordelia knew she couldn't wait any longer. She called Augusta's roommate Peace, and together they made the decision that would change everything. They were going to Benjamin's apartment. Whatever they found there would end the silence, but neither woman was ready for what awaited them behind that door.
By the morning of July 13, 2023, Cordelia's fear had hardened into resolve. 2 days had passed without hearing her daughter's voice, and every instinct in her body told her that something was terribly wrong. She could no longer sit at home waiting. She picked up her phone and called Peace, Augusta's roommate and close friend from Lead City University. Peace admitted that she, too, hadn't seen Augusta. "She was supposed to meet me for lunch yesterday," she confessed, "but she never showed, and that's not like her." That single admission confirmed what Cordelia already knew. Her daughter was in danger. The two women agreed to meet and go directly to Benjamin's apartment at Oral Estate, Aha. The drive was agonizing. Cordelia's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Every honk, every stoplight felt like time mocking her urgency. She kept glancing at her phone, praying for a message from Augusta to break the silence, but the screen remained dark. When they finally pulled into the estate, the first thing Cordelia saw was the Mercedes-Benz C300 parked neatly in its usual space. For a moment, her heart leapt. Surely, if the car was here, Augusta must be home. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she was ignoring calls because she was upset. But then another thought hit like a knife. Augusta would never leave her car behind if she had gone somewhere. Never. The car sat gleaming in the Lago's sun, a cruel reminder of the life Benjamin had wrapped around her daughter, a life that glittered from the outside but was hiding a storm within. Cordelia turned to Peace, her voice trembling. "She's here. I can feel it." They climbed the stairs to the second floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hallway smelled of cooking spices and laundry detergent, ordinary scents that contrasted painfully with the dread building in Cordelia's chest. When they reached the door, Cordelia knocked softly at first. "Augusta, it's Mama. Open the door." No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. Peace added her own voice, calling out Augusta's name. Still nothing. Cordelia's chest tightened. She reached for her phone and dialed the Lago State Police. Her voice cracked as she explained. "My daughter, I haven't heard from her in 2 days. Her car is outside. I know she's in there. Please, you have to come." The officers arrived within 20 minutes, though to Cordelia it felt like 20 hours. A uniformed man named Officer Adabo approached, assessing the situation quickly. He saw the mother's desperation, the parked car, the unanswered knocks. His expression hardened. "Ma'am, stay here," he ordered, though his own face betrayed that he already knew what awaited inside.
The officers stepped in first, their boots crunching against something on the floor. A few seconds later, one of them muttered under his breath, "Oh God." Another officer's voice broke the silence, strained and grim. "We've got a body." Cordelia pushed forward despite their protests, her mother's instinct overpowering every command. And then she saw it. Her daughter, Augusta, lay sprawled on the living room floor, her young life snatched away in the most brutal fashion imaginable. The room told its own story: overturned furniture, broken glass, blood spattered across the walls. But the sight of Augusta's body was worse than anything Cordelia could have imagined. Her daughter wasn't just gone. She had been mutilated.
The violence went beyond rage. It looked deliberate, calculated. Cordelia collapsed to the ground, wailing with a sound so raw it pierced the hearts of even the hardened officers. Peace knelt beside her, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering, "No, no, no, not Augusta!" Forensics teams began arriving, stringing up yellow tape, photographing the horror. Officers collected a handwritten note left conspicuously on the coffee table, a note that would later become a key piece of evidence in the case against Benjamin. Though its contents were not made public immediately, investigators later admitted it suggested planning, not impulse. Neighbors began gathering outside, murmuring in shock. Some whispered that they had heard shouting days before but assumed it was just a lover's quarrel. Others admitted they noticed Benjamin leaving the apartment alone, his face hard, his movements hurried. The realization hit them all at once. While they went about their lives, a young woman was being murdered just a few steps away. As officers zipped Augusta's body into a black bag, Cordelia clung to the air, screaming her daughter's name as though sheer will could bring her back. She trusted him! She thought he loved her! And in that moment, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a fight gone too far. This was something else, something far more calculated. If you were a neighbor and heard those cries for help, would you have knocked or would you have stayed silent? Because sometimes silence costs lives.
Meanwhile, before the day Cordelia and Peace arrived at Benjamin's apartment, while Augusta's body still lay in that apartment, Benjamin did something no one expected. Instead of fleeing immediately, instead of calling the police, he picked up his phone and opened Instagram. And there, to his thousands of followers, he wrote words that would shake Nigeria to its core. In a simple black screen with white text, he typed, "I mistakenly stabbed her. I ran away out of fear." Mistakenly. That word alone set off a storm, because who mistakenly stabs someone? Who mistakenly leaves a body behind, mutilated and abandoned? It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an admission of guilt. It was a performance, a carefully worded attempt to control the narrative. And as the minutes passed, he continued posting. Story after story appeared, each one more shocking than the last. He wrote that he had lost the person he cherished the most, that he felt broken, that he didn't intend for things to go this far. In one post, he even suggested that Augusta had been holding the knife, twisting the story so that somehow she looked like the aggressor. The screenshot spread faster than wildfire. Within hours, Nigerians across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were sharing the posts, tagging news outlets, and demanding justice. The hashtags Justice for Augusta and Arrest Killaboi began trending nationwide. Celebrities reposted the stories with disbelief, some calling it the height of arrogance, others pointing out how social media had now become the stage for murder confessions. But Benjamin wasn't finished. He played the victim, writing, "I wanted to do the right thing and turn myself in. I will gladly die by paying with my life now," as if the world should feel sympathy for him, as if he had been trapped by circumstances, not by his own violent hands. It was manipulation at its peak, and many recognized it for what it was, a distraction. While the country focused on his Instagram stories, Benjamin was already planning his escape. The very same posts that shocked the world also bought him time. Journalists and social commentators dissected every line. Why post online but not go to the police?
Why confess in riddles instead of facing the consequences? The consensus was annoying. Benjamin craved attention. Even in the aftermath of murder, he couldn't resist the validation of likes, comments, and shares. He wanted the world to talk about him, and it did. But Cordelia, reading those posts, felt nothing but rage. She later told reporters, "My daughter is gone, and this man wants us to feel sorry for him? He killed my best friend and expects sympathy?" By the time law enforcement arrived at Benjamin's hangouts, he was already gone. The man who had just confessed to murder in front of thousands had disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only digital evidence and a grieving family.
When the police finally went looking for Benjamin Best, he was nowhere to be found. The same man who had flooded Instagram with his so-called confession had already vanished into the night. He didn't wait for the law to come knocking. He knew exactly what to do because he had been preparing for this moment. Benjamin wasn't just an abuser with a temper. He was also a man with money and connections. Within hours of fleeing Lagos, he tapped into underground networks that specialized in vanishing people. With the right amount of cash, you could erase your past and be reborn under a new name. And Benjamin had plenty of cash. The first identity he purchased cost him $25,000. The name on the passport was Kanu Princeton Samuel, a supposed citizen of Sierra Leone. It came with a pristine backstory, fresh documents, and a clean slate. For the next few weeks, Benjamin transformed himself. He cut his hair differently, grew a beard, and even changed the way he walked. Friends who once recognized him instantly would have done a double take if they saw him. He slipped across the border into West Africa, traveling through back routes, never staying long in one place. He paid for everything in cash, avoided major hotels, and stayed away from airports where biometric scanners might expose him. For a while, it worked. In Freetown, Sierra Leone, Benjamin rented a small apartment and laid low, living under his new identity. But arrogance is a dangerous thing. Despite his disguise, Benjamin couldn't resist the nightlife. One October evening in 2023, he made the mistake of going to a nightclub. Maybe he thought no one would recognize him, or maybe he thought he was untouchable. But a single pair of eyes in that crowd knew exactly who he was. A tip was sent, and within hours, Sierra Leonean authorities stormed the venue and arrested him. For a moment, it looked like the chase was over. Cordelia even received the call she had been praying for. Her daughter's killer was in custody. But fate wasn't finished with this story. Just a few weeks later, chaos erupted. A coordinated attack on the detention facility where Benjamin was being held freed 17 prisoners, and Benjamin was among them. The escape was no accident. Intelligence reports later revealed that he had kept in touch with his criminal contacts, and money had handed changes to ensure he wouldn't stay behind bars. Just like that, the man who had killed Augusta was gone again, vanishing into the shadows while Cordelia's fragile hope collapsed. For the next 14 months, Benjamin became a ghost. Authorities tracked whispers of him moving through Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. He never stayed in one place for more than a few weeks. Every time the police got close, he was already gone. And all the while, he funded his movements through cryptocurrency, untraceable transactions that made it nearly impossible to pin him down. But Benjamin couldn't hide forever. By the end of 2024, his arrogance betrayed him once again. He had fled to Qatar, living under yet another stolen identity, this time with a forged Guinean passport that called him Tay Abdul. For months, he lived in Doha, frequenting upscale restaurants, lounging in luxury hotels, and slipping back into the lavish lifestyle that had once impressed Augusta. He thought he was safe. He thought the world had forgotten. But every transaction, every careless move, every luxury dinner was leaving a trail, and investigators were watching. Benjamin's arrogance had finally set the stage for his downfall, and what happened next would drag him all the way back to Lagos to face the justice he thought he had escaped.
By early 2025, Benjamin's arrogance had finally caught up with him. In Doha, Qatar, he was living as Tay Abdul, a fake Guinean businessman with expensive taste. But investigators had been watching closely. His forged documents, his cryptocurrency transactions, and even his face, altered but still recognizable with biometric scans, all betrayed him. In February 2025, Qatari police moved in. They surrounded him at a luxury hotel he frequented. For a brief moment, Benjamin tried to bluff, presenting his fake passport with the same confidence he once used to convince Augusta of his love. But the technology didn't lie. Fingerprints, facial recognition, and the mountain of evidence from Nigeria all confirmed what the world already knew. This was Benjamin Best, a fugitive and confessed killer. After weeks of diplomatic back and forth, Qatar approved his extradition. On April 19, 2025, Benjamin was placed on a plane under heavy guard and flown back to Nigeria. When he landed in Lagos, cameras flashed, and journalists shouted questions as police escorted him through the airport. The man who once flaunted his life on Instagram was now being paraded in handcuffs. The trial began that summer at the Lagos State High Court, and from the very first day, the courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, and everyday citizens squeezed into the gallery. Outside, crowds gathered with placards demanding justice for Augusta. The prosecution came prepared. They presented an airtight case built from months of investigation. DNA evidence, Augusta's blood under Benjamin's fingernails, fingerprints, his prints on the knife used in the attack, apartment security footage showing him leaving the building alone on July 11, 2023, and most damning of all, his own words, the Instagram confession that had gone viral across the nation. Each screenshot was projected in court and read aloud to the jury. "I mistakenly stabbed her." The words echoed through the chamber, hitting like hammer blows. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge paused, giving her time to compose herself. Some jurors wiped their eyes. Others looked down, shaken by the raw grief spilling from a mother who had lost everything. Over the following days, witnesses testified about Benjamin's controlling behavior, his jealousy, his obsession with monitoring Augusta's every move. Forensic experts broke down the brutality of the attack, emphasizing that the wounds were consistent with rage and intent, not a single moment of mistake. Finally, after weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. The room was tense as they filed back in, everyone holding their breath. The foreman stood, hands steady. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Benjamin sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the floor. On the charge of mutilation of a corpse, guilty. The air in the courtroom seemed to crack open. Gasps echoed. Some cried quietly. Others nodded in solemn agreement. The judge delivered the sentence with finality. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Benjamin would never walk free again. Cordelia wept in the gallery, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of exhaustion, of release, of finally knowing that the man who had stolen her daughter's life would never harm another woman. She whispered to herself, "She can finally rest." Outside the courthouse, crowds cheered. Placards that read, "Justice for Augusta," waved high. Activists embraced. Young women posted online about finally feeling seen. And Nigeria took a step toward reckoning with the epidemic of intimate partner violence. Yet for Augusta's family, justice felt bittersweet. They had a verdict, but they didn't have their daughter back.
Augusta Osedion should be 23 today. She should be celebrating her graduation, walking across a stage with her classmates and smiling proudly as her mother cheers the loudest from the crowd. She should be sketching designs for her first clothing line, building the fashion empire she always dreamed of. She should be alive, laughing, thriving, and proving to the world that her dreams were bigger than her fears. But instead, her name has become something else, a cry, a warning, a rallying call for every young woman who has ever mistaken obsession for love, every mother who has ever felt her child slipping away, every friend who has ever worried in silence. Augusta's story isn't just about one relationship gone wrong. It's about the thin line between love and control. It's about how gifts can become chains. It's about how silence from neighbors, hesitation from friends, and the arrogance of abusers can destroy lives. And it's a lesson we must never forget. Love should never feel like control. Love should not make you afraid. Love should not silence you, isolate you, or cage you. If Augusta's story teaches us anything, it's this: to listen to the whispers of fear before they turn into screams of tragedy. If you believe Augusta deserves justice, if you believe her story should save others, then please hit the like button, share this video with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can make sure Augusta's life, though cut short, continues to shine as a light in the fight against toxic love and domestic violence. Because her story may end here, but her legacy, her voice, will echo far beyond this moment.